Welcome to part 2 of our Dwarf Fortress Masterwork Let's Play. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to now take the file you've just downloaded, and we're going to review some of the game settings before we dive into the utilities that are included with the mod, and also cover how to, and eventually, how to get the stone sense and sound sense utilities working. So for this episode, let's take a look at the settings. After downloading the file we talked about in episode 1, you should have a zip file that you should be able to use WinZip, WinRAR, 7-Zip, or any of the other unzipping programs that are out there. If you don't have a program, I'd recommend you head over to ninite.com. Easiest way to download upgrades and apps and things for your computer. Keeps them all up to date, very simple. All right, so once you get in, this will be what's in the folder. Let's go ahead and fire up the settings page. And I just want to go through this and show you, kind of what's available with the game. So, first off, settings page. You have the option to set the game into windowed mode, or full screen, or prompt. I usually just leave it on no or prompt so that I can I have some control over whether it's going to be full screen or not. Digging stop allows you to control whether or not the game is automatically paused when you find damp or hot stones. I recommend you turn this to no. That allows you to just continue the gameplay, and if you want to dig underneath a river or something, it's not going to constantly pause your game. Intro movie. This is pretty useful. The very first time you watch it's kind of neat, just because it's pretty well done. But after you've seen it once or twice or 100 times, it gets a little bit old, so you might want to turn it off. This is a very important setting, temperature. I do recommend you keep this to yes. Turning it off can reduce your FPS, but it's going to, as the description says, it's going to rob you of many of the game features. Most of the actual additions that MEF has added to the game require temperature to work. So I recommend you leave that on. Weather should stay on if possible. Cave-ins definitely for immersion. Invaders, you can turn this off if you're just learning the game, but it's a big part of Dwarf Fortress. Liquid depth puts a it superimposes a number over the top of the water depth so you can see how deep water is. Population cap, you can control the maximum number of people that will migrate to your fortress. This does not limit childbirth, so if you're at 200 and somebody gets pregnant, then you can go to 201. Heck, I've actually gone from 200 to 250 just based on child rearing. So child cap, though, is the number that limits the number of people that can be part of your fortress through childbirth. There's two numbers involved. 100 is the absolute cap on how many kids you want to have. And the second number is the percentage relevant relevant to the number of adult dwarves in the fortress. So for instance, if you have a child cap of 10, for instance, the most you can have is 10 children. If the child cap is set to 1,000 here, that means that you can have 1,000% of the number of adults in the fort. So a 30 dwarf fort could have potentially as many as 300 kids running around. So you can kind of control it in a few different ways there. FPS counter, frames per second counter, shows you how many frames the game is running at. This should stay on. Graphics cap you can reduce to improve your frame rate. I wouldn't go much lower than, say, 15, just because it can cause the game to be unresponsive to your commands. FPS, this is a big change from vanilla Dwarf Fortress. Vanilla runs at about 100 frames per second by default. This game runs at 150. You can slow it down if you want, if you're used to 100 frames, but you can also control it while you're within the game. Sound doesn't really matter. There is no real sound to the game, unless, of course, you're using Sound Sense, which is a separate utility. These are the basic save settings that come with regular Dwarf Fortress. I do recommend that you have seasonal autosave on. You can back up your autosaves so that you can go back in time if you really want to. Initial save lets you save right when you embark. Pause on load should stay to yes, because when you load the game up, bad things might be happening. Compress saves, not really worried about that. I'd probably turn that off if you have storage space. This Masterwork mod comes with a lot of different tile set options that are built in. Very easy to change. The ones that I like are Phoebus and Iron Hand. I cannot play on ASCII just because I started off playing on a tile set and I can't do it. I've tried, but I hope I don't lose any viewers over that comment, but I just, when you come into this game, I think the way you start playing it is the way you prefer it, and I came into it with a graphics set. So I like the NES color. You can modify it a few times if there's if you like to make the game look a little bit different. Creature sprites uses customized creature graphics, so you're not just looking at a letter. If you like letters, then if you want to see G for goblin, then you can. But this is for the customized sprites. So I like having character. I like the little graphics. True type. This is going to be Masterwork comes with a Masterwork font. It's a specialized font. It's different from normal True type. It's pretty good looking. However, in the current version of Dwarf Fortress, there is a major bug when it comes to True type fonts. And it causes some graphical glitches where you can't see all of the text, and it flickers. It's very irritating. So at least for this version, I'd recommend you leave True type off, and that it's going to make the game look like regular Dwarf Fortress a little bit more, but that's fine. I mean, it's easy to see and understand everything that's going on. Vanilla key bindings is just your standard key bindings, or you can go to laptop key bindings if you're on a laptop. And there's a separate new arena that you can use for the Dwarf Fortress Arena mode. Going through the next tab, I just recommend for the most part leave these on. These are all the different creatures that are involved, the different races that you can fight. And leave all of these off. Unless you want an extra challenge like frogmen, hellfire imps, stranglers, they're available, but start the game off just on the normal settings. Just leave it as is. Creatures, you've got the new domestic pets that are added, new animals, vermin, giant animals, mega beasts, birds, fish, animal men, etc. I'd leave all of this on. It's on by default. You can generate random creatures to add to the game, anywhere from 10 to 1,000. This is if you are getting tired of the same old creatures being on your map and you just want to randomly generate random creatures. It's kind of neat. Makes every game different. Evil twins, these things make the game harder. I, again, recommend you leave them off to start, and you can add them on later if you want. Now the materials tab, this shows you basically how the game is made to run so much quicker than standalone regular Dwarf Fortress. So what Meph has done is he's simplified trees, gems, soil, stone, minerals, pets, toys, and meat, meaning that instead of having different types of wood, alder, cedar, willow, etc., it's just wood. It's just wood, and then you're going to have fewer gem types, only a couple types of soil, only a few types of stone. The same amount of material is going to be on your game and in the map. It's going to limit the number of them so that there's less for the game to keep track of, making it run much better. I actually like to keep simple meat off because otherwise you just get one type of meat, and I like having multiple so that I can cook with it, but that's personal preference. And then there's actually more flavor that you can add if you want. I'd like to turn off more engravings though because I actually prefer for it to again run as quickly as possible. Workshops, I'd leave every single thing that's on here on. This is really what makes the mod the mod. If you leave it on, you're going to do a lot better. There's more to do. It's complicated at first, but I'm going to walk you through how it all works, and we'll have some fun with it. Same thing for furnaces. The only thing that doesn't work in the current version, 0.2G, is this warpstone lab, and it's off by default, so don't worry about it. It's just not currently implemented. Miscellaneous features. So we've got normal things that you can disable with... actually, on regular Dwarf Fortress, you can't disable it, but on this you can. You can just disable aquifers automatically. They won't even exist. Have your animals graze or not. These things make the game a little bit harder, and I think they're fun, so you should leave them on. And there's extra vanilla reactions. So there's more things to do in vanilla buildings. They were added into these buildings. Again, just leave them all on for the most part. Casts is going to be, each dwarf has a potential to be a specific type of dwarf. You've got like fighter dwarfs, crafter dwarfs, royal dwarves. I usually actually turn this off because I don't like extra variables to clutter up my dwarf therapist. That's personal preference. I just like it to be more based on, this dwarf wants to do this. We'll go over that in more detail later. You can get diplomats from elves and humans. Meteoric iron is a type of iron that lands from meteors on the surface. Corpses is going to allow you to disable some of the corpses that you see, like from invaders. So this can reduce the amount of lag that you get from having too many invaders over a long period of time. And there's war beasts, concubines, transformation messages if you're seeing things like a werewolf. Cavern flavor. This is going to be the first 1, 2, and 3 levels of the cavern. And then I'd leave the rest of these on. I do turn off new nobles just because I don't really see much reason for them. I don't do a lot of succession type forts, and the psychiatrist and the preacher I think just make things easier. Utilities, this is where we're going to go over all the different utilities that are available they come pre-packaged with the game. And then the mod links. This is just some things that that MEF finds to be some other interesting mods that you might want to look into. Now keep in mind that that you can also play as orcs and as kobolds. We're going to be playing as dwarfs, so we're not really going to spend any time on this. There is a link here to the manual that you can go to, which is going to be the Dwarf Fortress webpage, and this is going to allow you to see a lot of information about how the game actually works. So it's a great way to learn. All right, so in the next episode, we'll talk about how these mods, the included utilities work, and we'll get ready to play soon. Thank you for watching.